Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bonus Point Podcast. My name is TJ Olson, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of the pod. This week is a good one. We have a good episode tuned in for you today. We are talking to a referee this week. It's always good to get an insight into not just the players and the coaches and the staff behind the scenes, but the guys that make the decision as well, and what goes into refereeing, what goes into kind of the whole process about either becoming a refereeing, how you go about your life and making decisions on the field. I'm really excited to talk to our guest today regarding that. Also, just want to give a shout out to Red Bull. I did the Red Bull World for Life run yesterday, and it was an awesome experience. They have a charity run that is for spinal cord injuries that starts the same time around the world. It was an incredible experience. The one downside is that it starts the same time around the world, and LA somehow got the shit end of the stick because we started at 4 a.m. So I had to get up at 3 and then run at 4. And then I was in the pub by 6 o'clock having a few beers. So it was good fun, but incredible experience. And I can't wait to do it next year. It's definitely going to be something I want to put on my calendar if I have the time to do it regularly. Really excited to do it again. But for the episode today, our first half segment is going to be all about chatting to our guests and talking about what goes into refereeing and also what they're doing to promote the game on their social media and trying to get people engaged to referee in North Harbour in Auckland. Second half, we're going to be talking all about Super Rugby, going into a few of the games that happened this weekend, as well as Super Rugby player retention. And the bonus point segment today is going to be all about quickfire refereeing questions. I can't wait to hear that one. Right into the pod. This is the Bonus Point Podcast. Okay, let's go straight into our rapid recap. The first game, Crusaders versus Blues. The final score, 36-20. Leicester Fainga'anuku having an incredible game again. Awesome to see him in that number 7 jersey and just showing what a hybrid player can do. It has been incredible to watch. Second one was the Chiefs and the Reds, 31-21 to the Chiefs. Chiefs are really showing that it is coming down to a full-man squad in an 80-minute game. Just came on and played absolutely ridiculously and held their own. 31-21 the final score. 126 for the Highlanders versus the Waratahs. Lots of chirping and lots of little fisticuffs going on during that game as well. Lots of razzle-dazzle as well. Kept it nice and clean and nice and interesting. Second last game, Hurricanes versus Moana Pacifica. A big 50 stack versus a 17. Hurricanes victors over that one, with Josh Morby scoring 4 tries. And the last one, the Brumbies toppling the Western Force, 32-15. Lonergan having an outstanding game for that one. Before we get into our guest today as well, I did want to highlight that Super Rugby Opiki is back in June, with the 2026 season set up as a short and concentrated competition that leads into the final in New Zealand and then a Trans-Tasman Championship. Really excited to see the return of this competition as well as the Trans-Tasman portion. I'd really like that the Super Rugby U and the Super Rugby Opiki winners get to battle it out in a Trans-Tasman game, and seeing some of the Black Ferns tests that have happened and the success they've had. The return of this competition has been marked as an opportunity to show the development that's coming through the ranks and some players potentially putting their hands up for Black Fern selection. But the return of this competition has been kind of shadowed with some disappointing medical retirement news of Black Ferns prop Afina Tangan Wainahu. She had a neck injury that ended her test career this week, and after further assessment in New Zealand, she will be medically retiring for the game. And I think it's a brutal reminder that although all rugby, incredible to watch, there's the community, these incredible athletes are out there on the field. We all know there's a high cost physical reality and there's a lot of player welfare that has to stay front and center even when the competition itself is gaining momentum. I think her story is a shining light into how important Opiki is as a pathway, because she returned through the Blues in 2025, I believe, from injuries and helped them win a title, and then got back into the Black Ferns contention before this injury setback. So the growth of Opiki is a big reason a lot of these players are being thrust in this selection conversation. So we get to see a balance between not only the quality of games, but how well it develops and protects its players across a full season and beyond. So to round out, Afina's rugby journey has been remarkable by all accounts. She leaves the game with huge respect from her teammates, coaches, and wider Black Ferns staff and in the environment. She's been praised for her resilience, her determination, and also the impact she's had on this new era of Black Ferns rugby, both on and off the fields. Ngā mihi, Afina, for everything you've given to rugby and for the inspiration you've been to your whānau, to your teammates, to fans, and what you've done for the Black Ferns jersey. We're wishing you all the best in your next chapter. All right, let's get into today's episode because we've got someone from a side of rugby that everyone has an opinion on, but a few actually understand. And it's the man in the middle with the bright coloured shirt and the whistle, the person that calls all the shots. And today we get to chat with someone who spent 12 years refereeing with 5 different associations, currently refereeing in the North Harbour Premier Men's Competition, as well as some regional rep stuff in Auckland. And lastly, he's kind of gone viral for doing some dumb stuff until people sign up to ref in North Harbour. So I can't wait to unpack that. It's going to be great to have a yarn with you. So please welcome to the show, Caleb Greaves. How you doing, Caleb?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Just relaxing on a rather gloomy looking Tuesday.
Love it, love it. Well, let's start with the reality of refereeing. I mean, what got you into the refereeing in the first place? Because most people don't grow up dreaming of being yelled at for 80 minutes. That's not really something they go into doing. So when it came to the refereeing portion, what kind of appealed to you?
Well, I grew up in a real like a lot of people in New Zealand do. I grew up in a big rugby family. Like everyone had played rugby. And so I had no real choice from about the age of 5. And I enjoyed playing. I wasn't overly great, even though I was probably the biggest dude on the field right up until I finished playing. But basically, it got to a point when I was 16 where I've got a back condition called scoliosis. So I've basically got a curvature of the spine. And then I've also got a shoulder that dislocates at will. And I played in the front row. And it just got to a point where the scrums got more competitive and my back pain got worse and worse and worse. And I was like, well, my grandfather used to be a referee. May as well follow in his footsteps and give that a go. And I think growing up around rugby definitely helped me in that regard with starting refereeing because I, for one, knew how much the game meant to me. And so I could kind of understand from that point of view how much the game would mean to the players, how much it would mean to the fans and things. So I think to your point about getting yelled at for 80 minutes, I can kind of understand why to an extent. But also at the same time, I think I've been very fortunate over the years to not have horrific things that you hear in the news happen to me. And I think that's one of the realities that I want to touch on is like the narrative that sometimes gets portrayed in the media is one of it being quite bad. But really, out of the 12 years, there's probably been, I could probably count on one hand how many incidents I've had. So it is actually, I actually really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Like I've refereed All Blacks, Super Rugby players, all that sort of stuff, and I would have never got the chance to be on the same field as them as a player. And so, yeah, it's honestly, it is really fun.
Yeah, and when it comes down to, especially in the front row, if you've got something wrong with your back and something wrong with your shoulder, those are 2 key elements that you need to have working if you want to keep playing footy. But yeah, that sounds great. I think it's a similar trajectory to me and how I got involved in footy as well. Like my dad was a player and a coach. Like my kuro, my grandfather, he was a coach. He coached the New Zealand Police Force. So it's something where you take all the inspiration and the resources you have in for your family and your community, and if you want to give back to the community and keep on trucking, it sounds like you found a good footing into keeping that memory and that I guess that prestige alive from what your family have done previously.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of referees get into the game. There are the odd one. There is the odd referee that comes from a completely different background and things, and or has never played the game. But for the most part, from the referees that I've met, they've all come from wanting to play first, and when they haven't been able to play, then for whatever reason, then they've chosen refereeing. I think that's a really good thing about it is, if you can't play, whether it's, work commitments, whether it's injuries or whatever, it is kind of a solo sport, like an individual sport in a team environment. So you can kind of show up whenever you want, really, for yourself, and referee to an extent, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I totally agree. And I think one thing that I wanted to touch on with you is something that doesn't get spoken about a lot is the fitness about it. Because although you're not out there tackling blokes, so you're trying to attack down an edge, you're essentially doing repeat high intensity efforts while making really important and complex decisions. Like we've heard guys like Ben O'Keefe and Nick Berry and talk about the rigors of refereeing, the testing that goes involved, like when they go into their Bronco testing and things like that, the law changes that are coming quite regularly, and they occur every year, whether it's trial laws or other things. So, how hard is it to stay sharp late in games when it comes down to fitness?
Yeah, it's interesting, eh? Because you're right. It isn't something that's talked about a lot. And even for referees at my level, nowhere near someone like Ben O'Keefe or Nick Berry, there still is a bit of demand fitness wise. And so, like, for someone like myself, I'm close to 2 meters tall and, quite a large referee in that regard. Most of them are sort of small little jockeys that run around. But, for me, it is hard work. Like I've basically got to do the same amount of Ks as the halfback in theory, but except I'm twice his size. So yeah, it can be hard. I think a lot of it is down to, like, yesterday I did a maximal aerobic speed session. So a lot of repeat efforts, sort of like 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, that sort of stuff, broken Bronco reps. And so have to do that stuff to remain sharp, because otherwise, like you say, when it gets to 80 minutes and something big happens, if you're not prepared for it fitness wise, you could absolutely turn the game on its head. And also taking into account the mental aspect of it. For me, and I know this kind of sounds a bit hocus pocus, but I do a lot of sort of visualization work in that regard. So if I've got, a big game or whatever, I'll think about, okay, well, what if this happens in the 80th minute? How am I going to deal with that? Bearing in mind that, I've just run for 6Ks prior. How am I going to deal with that in that moment? What if a random thing happens, like a try is scored, but the ball is grounded simultaneously between the try line and the touch and goal line and the flag? How am I going to deal with that in the 80th minute so that the players, all understand what's happening, the crowd all understand what's happening. Hopefully, I understand what's happening. So yeah, a lot of that fitness is around, like, my whole sort of theory on the fitness of refereeing is about doing justice for the players, because if I'm not fit, they're not going to get the outcomes that they deserve. And I think that's actually quite unfair on players as well, particularly because they put themselves, as I said earlier, like, understanding the game, they put themselves through so much during the season, during trainings, they're not paid to get to a Saturday. And because I'm not fit enough, I absolutely crap the bed in the 79th minute. Like, that's just completely unfair in my mind. And so a lot of my fitness is based around making sure that I am fit enough for the players. So there is, like, a lot of running stuff, a lot of sort of, this is getting into the boring nitty gritty stuff, but a lot of sort of posterior chain weight based stuff, squats, deadlifts, Bulgarian split squats, all that sort of jazz, just to make sure that you're sharp and ready to go, really.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think I've watched a couple of docos about uh, referees or just rugby in general and getting the opportunity to see what goes on behind the scenes. It's definitely like the visualization definitely helps because, like you said, you want to be prepared to make decisions in a split second moment. I think the even tougher part with grassroots is you don't have the liberty of the TMO. You only have a couple of ARs and maybe other resources that you can use. You can ask players what they saw. There's only a handful of things you can do, so you've got to be sharp and you've got to be confident to make that decision. I think the next question I wanted to ask you is when you think about, because you spoke about the public and making sure they understand and they leave the game feeling like everybody has been well done by and the decisions have been made across the board that are equitable for everybody. What's something do you think that people think is easy about refereeing, but is actually really hard?
I mean, it's a list a mile long, really, because I think the first thing is what we talked about before, right? Is them actually realizing that there's a lot that goes into the week leading up. There's, like, I've got my own personal referee coach. I've just spent a good couple of hours yesterday not reviewing my game because my game was an 8-0 hiding, so there's no point reviewing that. But I was reviewing someone else's game and clipping stuff up. And so there's a whole lot of that stuff that goes into it that I think people don't realize. And it's not just basically us turning up and just having a red hot go with a whistle and throwing some cards in there for fun. There's a lot of process. And I think that's the thing is refereeing is a heavily process driven task. Like people go, for example, at a breakdown, the jackal is on his feet, he's got the ball, why aren't you penalising that? It's like, well, okay, well, the tackler actually hasn't rolled away. That's the first thing we look for at the breakdown. So if you're not even bothered, like, I'm not even going to look at anything else until the tackler is gone. And again, this is getting into the weeds with it a bit, but just little things like that, I think people don't realise how nuanced refereeing can be. And I think that's a wider discussion around society and where it's at the moment, which I won't get into because it's, getting deep and meaningful on it. But I think that maybe there's not as much time for nuance as there used to be. Rugby's a very nuanced game that's based on a constant contested possession. So of course there's going to be 60-40s, 70-30s, 50-50s and things. I think I think there's so many things that the general public I think would take for granted in the refereeing space, but I think none more so than the week leading up.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. I definitely agree with the nuances of the game. And I think obviously the laws that are being introduced don't make it any easier for referees because they've got other interpretations. And if people aren't staying up to like knowledge or getting insight into the laws that are changing, they might, like I remember watching the game at a club in New Zealand a few years ago, and this guy hadn't watched an actual game in probably about, 15 years. So he was going off laws that had been happening back in like old NPC days. So having to explain that and have that conversation is always fun. But I won't go into the nitty gritty of what's the worst you've copped on a field because I don't want you to relive all the terrible moments. But let's ask, if it comes down to players, coaches, or spectators, who gives it to you the most or the best?
Oh, spectators are the worst.
All day.
Oh man, I think it's because they feel as though there's a disconnection there, and because they don't know you either. That's the other thing. Like most of the players in Harbour, I've seen them around for a couple of years or whatever. Most of the coaches as well. Whereas spectators, they're kind of turning up on the day. Some of them may have had 5 or 6 beers. Some of them, probably have a bit of shit going on and they want to get something off their chest and for whatever reason they've chosen me in that moment. And so, yeah, I mean, it's taken a while, but I literally don't hear it anymore. I just don't even
It's just
hear it.
kind of like white noise now.
It is a bit like white noise. The funniest ones are usually like, I have clapped back at a couple of spectators before and won, which is quite funny. But yeah, I think they also think that you're dumb as well, which is quite funny. But I can be fairly quick. So yeah, they kind of don't expect it when I turn around and give them something back, and then it kind of just evens the playing field in that regard.
Well, I hope you get to share a bit of that on your Instagram page because I would love to hear a couple of different interactions. I remember seeing Angus Gardner over the weekend talking to a couple of players, and although he's probably my favourite referee in regards to interactions with players, he's also a pretty smart guy who can always clap back with other people. But I do want to talk about this recruitment strategy that you've got going because I see a lovely sign behind you. I see an awesome Instagram page that you've got. Explain to me, because you've come up with one of the best recruitment strategies I've seen in a long time. It might be a detriment to your health because it is you doing some dumb things to get people to sign up. But how has this actually worked and what kind of interactions have you gotten since you started posting for people to get to come referee?
Well, stick it this way, I'm still going, so it's not working overly well. But it all kind of started because I got roped onto our referees board to do sort of communication stuff. And I was like, and then they were sort of saying, oh, what can we do to grow the membership? Because we were down on numbers this year from last year. And that's just a fact of life with refereeing. Like It's a hard task. Not everyone's going to enjoy it because it takes a lot out of you. There's travel involved and it does take up a lot of your time. So how are we going to sort of come up with a way to try and get people to referee? And so I thought, well, with my background with working with media and content and things, I was like, I may as well do something with our social media. And so just thought I'll just do something extremely rogue and see how it goes. And it's gone all right. I mean, we've got one new person. I haven't actually checked the registration in a couple of days, so I'm hoping it'll be more. But yeah, that's basically it, man. And it's more just about starting a conversation. Like I always know that with social media content and things, it's not like 2014 where an influencer would post, "Go and buy my face cream," and then everyone would basically go and do it. Like
Yeah.
social media is very different now. It's very saturated with all sorts. So you've got to be consistent and constantly on it for anything to work. So I know it's going to be a slow burn, but it's already started some conversation. Like referees were sort of telling me all around the country that they're getting asked, "Oh, who's this dude?" or "What's North Harbour doing? Like, what's the go with that?" Like I had a game in the Auckland comp on the weekend, and people were like, "Oh, have you got anyone signed up?" There's just a bit of conversation now around refereeing and it being, I suppose, an option. I think what refereeing, like referees, we've tried our guts out for years to try and get numbers, but it's all been in a very earnest manner, like, "Oh, we're really struggling and this and that," which we are. But the goal with what we're doing at Harbour is to try and make refereeing a bit more relatable to a wider audience and make it content rather than just, "Hey, come and join us. Hey, come and join us. Hey, come and join us." Make it something that people can engage with that also just happens to be on the side, "Hey, come and join us." So that's the goal. Whether we'll get 5 people to sign up, I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball. But it's the bigger conversation around refereeing and refereeing numbers that I think it has been started, which is good.
Well, I'm probably a problem because when you posted your first video, I was one of the first comments that said, let's make sure like no one signs up just for day one because I want to see where this goes. And then we got to day 8 and I was like, I really hope people have signed up because this is becoming a quality series. I'm really enjoying it. But is what you tackled a rubbish bin, you were climbing a tree. I think there was a couple other ones that I was like, man, he's getting inventive here and I love it.
Yeah, I red carded someone in a library, which was awfully awkward because I walked into this library and I had a mate film it for me. And this poor lady was basically the only person there. And I was like, well, I haven't driven all the way to this library for nothing. I'm going to have to just red card her. And so I walked up to her and she had no clue. She had no clue. I don't reckon she had seen rugby before or anything like this. And, we're in this Hawaiian shirt looking Cass probably like, what the hell is going on? And so anyway, she packed up and fully left after I red carded her. And I had to say to her on the way out, I said, "Hey, look, it's a joke. It's a joke." And she was just so confused. So
I feel like that'll make it go even further because that will be like a genuine reaction on social media, and you'll see the face in the video. You can't fake general confusion. Like you can't fake it.
no, you can't. You absolutely can't. And that was the good thing about that.
That's awesome. No, I can't wait to watch that one because I haven't seen that one yet. But
Well, it's already up there.
I can't wait to watch that after we finish recording this. This will be great. Well, if someone's listening right now and you said, here's one reason why they should give refereeing a go, what would the reason be?
I think for me, in a long-winded sort of answer to it, I've been doing it for 12 years, and I've made a ton of mates for life. So there's one. I've completely turned around my sort of, not that my health was in absolute tatters and was a piece of shit, but I've gotten the most fit I've ever been out of refereeing rugby. And it's also something that can give you a bit of a purpose and a bit of a goal as well. I find if that's where you want to head with it, but also it's good to be in like with where things are at the moment. It's really good to be in a community each Saturday that's there for the common goal, as cliche as that sounds. So there's a whole lot of things that are good about refereeing that I think people forget about. It is awfully similar to playing We talk about players we don't like, just like the players talk about referees they don't like, We all have a laugh. We had a quiz night the other night and had a few beers together. It is it seems scary because it's like, oh, refereeing, all these people, like, all they do is just, bark at you and blow the whistle. It's like, well, no, actually, we're actually quite, you know, marginally eccentric people who enjoy having a laugh, is what I'd say. And all the associations up and down the country are the same. And so I just say to people, if playing's not working out, if you've got a bung back like me or a terrible shoulder or whatever, you're running out of time to go to Tuesday, Thursday practice at 7 o'clock, come a referee. It's nowhere near as scary as you think it is.
No, I agree. I think that's an excellent point to make and keeps you involved in the game because we know people in New Zealand, they're all about their footy. They love it. And once you get to certain points in your life, you either have to hang up the boots or you don't have time to get out to training and you can't make that commitment. So I feel like as long as you're able to keep the fitness up and you're able to get out to games on the weekend, I agree. It's a great way to stay in touch with the game and build that community. So I hope we get some people from this getting to sign up. So if you're interested in refereeing, hit up Caleb, or at least if you want to move to a beautiful part of New Zealand, you want to go referee in North Harbour, you could relocate and you can get in touch with them. So that would be good fun.
No,
Awesome.
absolutely.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Well, I'll be in touch with you to see how many people sign up. But thank you for that insight into your career and refereeing. Let's shift into Super Rugby Pacific because this round gave us a lot to unpack. We've had the Brumbies getting a much needed win over the Force, the Highlanders sneaking past the Waratahs in a tight one, Chiefs and Reds in a real top end battle, Crusaders getting over the Blues, and we'll touch on that one in a bit. And I know you want to go into that one. But big one I want to touch on in the end of this conversation is also regarding New Zealand player retention. So lots of different things we get to talk about. How much Super Rugby are you watching on a regular basis? Because after refereeing a few games on the weekend, are you sitting down having a few beers and then watching a few games?
Yeah, I went to the Hurricanes Moana game because the North Harbour Stadium's just down the road from where I live. So lucky enough to head along to those games. But yeah, I do watch a little bit of it. I usually watch the Friday night games, and then Saturday is just a complete write-off, really. Once I get back from the aftermatch at whatever club I'm at, usually if I've got time, I'll turn on the 7 o'clock game. But thankfully on Saturday I was able to head along to it. So yeah, do watch a little bit as much as I can.
No, it's awesome. And talking about the Canes Moana game, Moana obviously having their issues with their announcement recently saying they're not expected to return this year. And so you'd expect the Hurricanes to get up this week. But this performance was a masterclass by the Hurricanes. Brad Shields setting up a try with Kanina Holo with that banana kick on the run. You got Josh Morby scoring 4 tries in the game. Hurricanes cracking 50 points. So they're on a tear at the moment. What do you think about the Hurricanes so far? And can they continue this form, you think, into playoffs?
Well, I bloody hope so because I'm a Hurricanes supporter and have been virtually since day one. So I'm absolutely stoked with how they're going. I think it's great to have Kenny back. He is a massive lump of a lad with exceptionally large, defined calves. So no wonder he's got shitloads of speed. So look, it was great to see him back out there. I think that was the best thing about it. But I think on another note, it is really tough watching Moana just completely fall off a cliff like they have. It was actually kind of sad because I was at a meeting last night at North Harbour Stadium and I saw the Moana bin that they do their team songs with, completely pristine, untouched because they haven't won at home. And I was like, that's one semi-humorous, but also quite dark at the same time. I think it was already every game with Moana now, I think, is a bit of a foregone conclusion. And I know that the boys won't like that being the case, but I think it's like if you get made redundant from a job, right? How hard is it to turn up for the next 3 weeks before you have to bugger off? It's awfully hard. Most people will whack it into neutral and just cruise. And so they don't know where whether they're going to be here in New Zealand next year. They don't know whether one of the consortiums that are apparently speaking with the Players Association, New Zealand Rugby, or whoever is going to take them up. Some players don't know, like some players will be at the end of a contract. They don't know if they're going to re-sign anywhere or whether they should look over the road to the Highlanders, the Hurricanes, whatever New Zealand franchise. So it is all up in the air. And to think that Moana actually beat the Hurricanes in the same game at the same venue last year, and to now lose by 50. Yeah, I think that's the biggest story there is where do Moana sit? And there's heaps of chat in New Zealand at the moment about the Kanaloa rugby group. There's Joe Okafoko, Sam Tuitupo, I think John R4's in there
Jerome
as well.
Kaino as well.
I think so, yeah. And I won't get into it too much, but there's a bit of sort of politicking going on where the CEO of Moana is actually the CEO of the funder. So I think they're kind of looking at not giving up the license, and there might be a bit of a battle there to try and get that. But I know this is going completely on a tangent now, but I know from a Harbour Rugby perspective with Moana have massively helped Harbour Rugby. Not the NPC side, clearly, because they were terrible last year, but it's helped lift our club game. There are a lot of Moana players that, are from the wider squad that I'd referee every weekend in club footy. They filter back out into our club game. And so I think it's actually really helped, A, using that stadium more because it was kind of just sitting there as a bit of decoration. And B, it's also been good for our club game, having those sorts of that level of player involved. So yeah, there's no winners in that. But I just hope someone can come through, some sort of billionaire with a bucket load of cash and come through and sort of prop it up.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree because I remember hearing all the stuff about Kanaloa and them trying to get the investment into that. And I know in previous years they had done certain things regarding a Hawaiian team in Major League Rugby out here, and they were trying to get that sorted. And then there was just a whole bunch of just grey area and politics going on here as well. They couldn't get their shit sorted out, so it was pretty disappointing to not see that come to fruition as well. But I 100% agree. I think Moana Pacifica, you saw what happens when they're humming and what they do for the competition, although a lot of people put that on Adi Savia being in the team and what he can bring. But I think it just takes one or two dominoes, and then we can start to really not just prop up Moana Pacifica and put them in a good place, is also put Super Rugby in a good place, which is ultimately how All Blacks are made. And we've started to really see how difficult it is when players have that stuff going on in the news, and it'll dawn on them where's the next paycheck going to come after this season and things like that. And not even just the players, the coaches, the staff. So yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I hope that someone does and comes and saves the day, and we do see Moana in 2027, because if not, it's going to be a very interesting signing period where we're going to see guys like Miracle Failangi get a kind of pitch to see where he's going, and other players trying to find contracts where teams might already be set. It's going to be pretty interesting to see.
It will be. And I think the other thing as well is, maybe we just go back to the future where a lot of these Samoa and Tongan players now no longer see Samoa and Tonga as a viable path. And I don't think it is at the moment with those organisations and how they've been run. We've already seen Samoa really struggle to qualify for the World Cup. They had to play Brazil, for goodness sake, to get into the World Cup in an expanded tournament. So, maybe players like Samisi Tupo Tailor look to the Highlanders and go, he's from down there. They, need some more loose forwards of that level. Maybe he now looks to there and goes, well, actually, I might try and crack the All Blacks. And in the form that he's in, shit, I mean, if I was an All Black selector, I'd be looking at that. There's a bigger picture to all of this, is, I suppose, in a long-winded way, is what I'm saying, is that it's not just about, giving more players of Pacific Island descent a chance at Super Rugby. It's about trying to find a filter to remedy some of the stuff that's going on in the islands in terms of the governance of their game over there.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Well, we hope to see Moana in 2027 and some of those players just see some light at the end of the tunnel. But let's chat next about the Chiefs and the Reds. I think the Reds were right in the contests for long stretches, but the Chiefs were on the side that handled the key moments better and found a way to win 31-21. In my opinion, that's, even though I'm a Chiefs fan through and through, that's the mark of a team that may not always dominate, but they know how to close out tough games. And we'll see how that happens when it comes to playoff time, because we've been synonymous for getting to finals and not being able to finish it out. But do you think the Chiefs are able to win in these games because they're the better team, or it's simply because they've had a cleaner last 20 minutes? Because they do have, comparatively to other organizations outside of the Canes and maybe one other team, they do have a pretty stacked bench that they're able to pull from when they're struggling in the 60-minute period.
Yeah, I think, oh, there's someone with a lawnmower that's just started. That's annoying. Anyway, yeah, I think so. I think rugby, as cliche as it sounds now, it's a 22 to 23 man game. Absolutely. And if you've got the better bench, I think you're odds on to win unless you've got exceptional starters that are fit as a fiddle and can go the full 80. But I think that's the difference between a lot of the New Zealand and the Australian sides. Back to the Hurricanes, you got Kiri Naholo on the bench. I mean, you pull that off, pull him on, and hello, I mean, shit, you've got someone who's a starter for every Super Rugby side, in my opinion. So, yeah, the Chiefs are exactly the same. I can't stand watching the Chiefs win. I'm sick of them making finals, but there's a reason why they're doing it.
It's fair. Even in defeat, I feel like the Reds, they did show enough attacking shape and physicality to stay relevant against one of the competition's stronger side. I think losses like this can be useful for them if a team is building towards something. And they struggled earlier in the season, but now they're in that top six. So do you think that this is going to be the kind of loss that helps the team grow, or is this kind of going to be like the one that exposes the same old issues?
I don't know. I feel like this is a conversation that I've had with lots of people over many years about the Australian Super Rugby sides, just to be extremely blunt about it. And I mean, if I had the answer for it, I'd be leading Super Rugby and running the thing,
Yeah.
because it just seems to be a common theme across the Australian sides over many years. I hope the is, go back to the drawing board, as the cliche goes, and sort of look at this. I'd hate for them to end up like how the Brumbies were in that sort of window where they just went back to back to back to back to back, getting absolutely pumped
Mhm.
after looking somewhat good. So, I mean, for the competition's sake, I hope they learn from it. From a New Zealand fan's point of view, I hope they don't. But I think, yeah, I would much rather see a couple of Australian teams in the top four than not, just for the sake, objectively looking at the whole competition.
That's always the internal battle as a Kiwi fan, huh? You're sitting there going, I never want any of these teams to win, but then it gets to that point where you go, nah, come on, let him have a
Yeah.
crack or let him go on a run. Because I think I was talking to a couple people about the Western Force as well, who are currently playing quite well. And when I look at their team on paper, when they're on, no one's going to beat them. It's
Mm.
they've got such attacking prowess, and they've got a really really good solid team across the board defensively. They're able to pull players from the bench that can make an impact. I want the Australian teams to be competitive as well, because it obviously also feeds into the Wallabies, and then you get a competitive Bledisloe and things like that. So yeah, I'm hoping that the Reds get on a good tear, especially with Les Kiss as well leaving to go coach the Wallabies.
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, there was a bit of stuff with just on Les Kiss, there's a bit of stuff with the referee after the game as well. And I just thought, really? No? 2026 and the Reds are going to moan about the referee? And I was
Yeah.
like, I mean, there were some things in there where, every referee comes off a game. You're never going to have a perfect game as a referee. And that's just one thing you have to just be comfortable with right from the get go. But I don't know. It just always seems when someone says something, even as diplomatically as Les Kiss did with the interviewer afterwards, I just thought, this just looks like sour grapes, mate. You know?
Oh man, I do love it though. It creates headlines and it's pretty funny. But
Yeah.
I agree. Well, last game I wanted to chat to you about is the Crusaders versus the Blues. Really interesting storyline, obviously, with Lester Fainganuku and the way he's been used in such a versatile role for the second week in a row, playing open side flanker. So David Havili's been coming out and he's been saying he can do it all. It's the kind of thing that gets people talking, because it feels like the game is moving toward more hybrid players. South Africa has been synonymous with hybrid players like Quagga Smith and other players with the with the 7-1 split. And we've seen other examples do it well in the past, but it's only been a handful that have done it quite well. So it's my firm belief if a player can handle contact, they can defend, they can threaten an attack. It's a huge weapon for any team. So do you think we're getting closer and closer to a version of rugby where traditional positions matter less than skill sets and versatility is now becoming one of the biggest assets in modern rugby?
Yeah, we're heading towards a point where we're looking at the athlete. We're not looking at the position. I had a classic example on the weekend where, I don't know if you know Shay Clark, who plays for the Blues as like a blindside. He played 50 minutes at centre. So, and he carved up, I think he scored like 4 tries. So, and that was in a club game, albeit, but he has the skills to do it. I don't see why not. You've got Ollie Mathis, who came through school as a 7/winger because he's just got out and out gas. He's got a kicking game. I don't see. I think it's kind of a rugby trope that's been around for years about just stay in your lane. You know, all the forwards wear black boots and all that sort of along the lines of that. Whereas now it's the athlete, not the position. And so look, Leicester can play 12, he can play 13, he can play wing, and he can play. I reckon he could probably play all 3 positions in the back row because of the skill set. So I think you'll find more and more players doing it. And like I say, Shay Clark, geez, here's some gas on the weekend coming from centre.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie Mathis is a great example. I love seeing his transition into Super Rugby and into NPC. He's a phenomenal example of that, a player that you just give him a ball and give him an opportunity, he's just going to make things happen. Well, if you look at the Crusaders versus the Blues, Crusaders had a lot of pieces that were going right for them versus the Blues. They had 56% territory compared to the Blues 44. In regards to possession, the Crusaders had 55% versus 45 for the Blues. The set piece favoured the Crusaders. They won 100% of their scrum feeds and 100% of their lineouts, while the Blues were only at 71% lineout success. And I think it came down to territory as well as the turnovers. I think the Blues had 15 turnovers, which in a small difference to the Crusaders having 14, it seems like a small margin, but enough in a game where the Crusaders were already controlling the ball and the Blues' discipline factor was just horrendous. The Blues conceded 9 penalties and a yellow card, while the Crusaders conceded 6 penalties and no yellow cards. So it looks like a match where the Crusaders didn't just have more ball, they used it better as well and were more stable under pressure. The Blues probably had moments, but the stats suggest they were chasing the game more often and couldn't build enough sustained pressure. The Crusaders won because they were cleaner, more composed. They were more efficient in the core rugby areas that mattered the most. The territory, possession, and discipline was a big one here. I think when you're looking at the competition at the moment, I want the Blues to be successful as well. Who in the Blues side are you looking at that if they get going, they'll start to find their rhythm and kind of get into that top 4?
I mean, the obvious ones, Stephen Perifeta, who's, you know, I think he's going all right if he's not injured. Bowden Barrett, I think, is absolutely key. I think the Blues need to diversify their game purely because they've played the same Vern Cotter brand of rugby for the last 4 years. And I mean, it's worked, it got them a title. But I think on the weekend, it was a classic example of we've run out of ideas, let's kick it, is basically their game plan. Let's go, let's truck it up the field for 20 phases. And then when we kind of, the big boys have had enough, let's just kick it into the corner. And I think teams are now starting to expose that brand of rugby, particularly with how a lot of the other teams are playing. And it's very much a 10-man game of rugby that the Blues play. Caleb Clark virtually did not get the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he is probably one of the fastest men in world rugby, big, strong unit. Get him the ball. Like, they've got attacking threats, I think, right across their backline, but they sort of stick in their lane probably a little bit too much of this 10-man game. Whereas you look at someone like the Crusaders, it's almost like they've got this license to, and the Hurricanes, they've got this license to thrill to a degree. So I think for the Blues, get your outside backs the ball, man. Like, honestly, I'd like to see Cody Vibe back in it, involved as well. I know he was playing club rugby for Marist on the weekend because I think he's just got that little bit of X factor that they need going forward.
Yeah, I agree. As I think a lot of people have started to compare them to the Blues to like a league style. Is they'll have a couple of carries and they'll just kick it up and they'll just hope for the best. Yeah, it's been a very obvious character trait that they're going to go in, and defenses just read that and they just go off that and are able to counterattack.
Yeah, it's literally, yeah.
Well, I think the last thing I want to talk to you about is from a perspective in New Zealand, because you're in the grassroots, is talking about player retention. I think the new NZR CEO, he was talking about the player exodus that is a big narrative in New Zealand, that a lot of players are going overseas, and it feels like it is one of the major stories around the whole competition, because you've got a handful of players who are playing out of their skin, like Fehi and Flanders and players like that. They're all signing overseas contracts. And he's also talking about how, coming out publicly saying Richie Mo'unga is not going to be eligible for the greatest rivalry tour against South Africa this year. And it's disappointing, because there seems to be this constant conversation about trying to compete with the likes of South Africa and other countries who select their best players from around the world, while they're making considerably more overseas, versus keeping the integrity of the black jersey and their selection process, and using All Blacks jersey as a motivation, and keeping the stocks of Super Rugby strong as well, which is obviously important for the domestic competition. So from your perspective, when you're looking at the stance on the selection process by New Zealand Rugby, what would you do? What is your thought about it?
It is a very nuanced and tough thing to look at, because rugby in New Zealand, if it wants to keep its foothold as I suppose the number one game in the country, it has to have relevance right across the board, right? And I think what will end up happening if, sure, we churn out a lot of good players in the club competitions and the NPC and things, but I think what will end up happening is, if players know that they can go overseas, you'll end up just having a whole lot of guys, like these guys that I know that are at club rugby, that are getting signed in Japan League One, because they're like, well, the money's great over there. So I think if you start then opening that up, you open up this Pandora's box of possibilities, and then, what's actually the point of playing in New Zealand? So I don't necessarily think everyone will just vacate and sort of flood the overseas zone, so to speak. But I think it's more of a conversation around how we keep rugby relevant in New Zealand. And that, I think, is by having our best players here. But I think also it is just a fact of life that, the Japanese competitions, the French competitions, and so on, have a hell of a lot more money,
Mm-hmm.
because they've either got big corporations involved or they're privatized. I definitely don't think that a privatized game in New Zealand will work as much, but we already do have quite a lot of professional teams or semi-professional teams for the amount of amount of people we've got in the country. So that's a totally other conversation. But maybe if we look at the way that contracts are set up, for example, I know Super Rugby players, there's a ceiling that doesn't even come to half of what some of the Japanese players are getting at the moment. So maybe if we look at that, I don't know, but I definitely think it's a challenging conversation, and the reason the switch hasn't been turned on yet, is because we need to keep the game relevant in New Zealand. And I think it is still very relevant at the moment. Like, sure, we're not getting bums on seats, because quite frankly, I don't think any Super Rugby side has actually cracked the code for what a fan experience is yet. But the TV viewership numbers are definitely there. And I'm a big league fan as well. I'll definitely go to the Warriors. But there's way more people watching rugby in New Zealand. I think there's a stat from my mate who works at Sky, and he was saying something like the Western Force in Moana at Navigation Home Stadium out in South Auckland had more people watching it than the Warriors that week. So people are still interested in rugby, but it's just, yeah, I think people are not going to these games because of the fan experience. So I think there needs to be some sort of relevance to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Was in Japan recently, and I got to go to one of the games, and I got to see guys like TJ Perenara and Liam Gill and guys like Pablo Matera playing in a game that the stadium was packed. It was full of fans. And granted, it's a smaller stadium than usual, but it still is just maybe 20% smaller than some of the stadiums. But everybody was engaged, such a good atmosphere. It was such a good production value. So they were able to get a lot from the fans as well. But again, to your point, is they do have a lot more money than New Zealand rugby are able to put in, or our teams are able to put into the fan engagement. To your point as well, I think there is a stat that says that Super Rugby is the most talked about domestic competition in the world. I mean, there's definitely social media engagement, and people are watching the games live. I never miss a game, and the games are on at friggin' terrible hours for me over here in LA, but I'm still making the sacrifice to go. I want to watch these footy games. But yeah, I can't wait, and I hope that Super Rugby is able to crack the code, because once we get bums in seats, the sky's the limit for what we can do. But it comes down to what the fan is getting out of it, and you'll see what we can do from that.
Yeah, I think, to that point about bums on seats, I think it's looking at how you can, like the stadiums that we're playing in at the moment. I think One New Zealand Stadium is far and away the best. It's new, it's shiny, it's glitzy, but besides that, it's actually the good size. Like it's 25,000, same as Dunedin, 25,000. Auckland having their 50,000 seater stadium, great for All Blacks tests, terrible for Blues games.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think maybe if they move into somewhere else, or if there's another stadium built, and I know this is a whole can of worms that's been going on for about 20 years, this new stadium chapter, Super Rugby doesn't need to be played in 50,000 seaters.
That's the worst part, is when you tune into a game and you see half the stands empty. I remember when I was living in Auckland in 2018, and the Blues were offering, I think, tickets for, I think it was 4 games for $40 or $50 to getting a deal, because they were doing so poorly. And then you get to the game and it's so cheap, but you still only have probably about 25% of the seats filled. It's terrible to feel like that, because there's no electricity, there's no energy. It's not fun to watch a game like that, even if the teams are doing well. But then you go to an All Blacks test at Eden Park 3 months later, place is packed. It's the best feeling ever. So yeah. I do hope Super Rugby, the live game, increases and also improves, but I'll definitely still be watching regardless, because I can't put it down. It's not gonna deter me away. But last, let's move on to our bonus point segment, and I like to call it the whistleblower. So it's going to be a short and sharp answer Q&A segment, where I'm just going to fire out some questions and you'll just give me some quick answers. So first one to go, toughest player to referee.
Any open side flanker.
That's a perfect answer. I love that we started with that. That's awesome. Most annoying things players do.
Lots. Most annoying things commentary while you're running, like telling you what's happening. It's like, yeah, I can see, I've got eyes.
Yeah, but they've just got to give you the forecast of everything as it's going on. I love it. Best rugby crowd.
Oh, best rugby crowd. Jeez. I think it's actually the first 15 high school games. I've got one on the weekend, actually. I've got Westlake versus Rosmini, which is the big rivalry here at Harbour, and it's on Sky, and those crowds are awesome.
There's nothing like it, first 15 crowd. It's just the energy that comes out of those places, and the passion. It's great. I'm excited. I can't wait to watch that one on Sky. It'll be good. One rule you'd delete instantly if you could.
Deliberate knockdown. Terrible.
So that's a perfect one. One rule no one understands.
Charge down. That you can still be offside from a charge down.
Okay, yep, that's a good one. Refereeing or playing, what's harder?
Oh, refereeing, yeah. It's definitely harder, I think.
There's just too much you got to do. Like there's too many things. Like people will be like, "Oh, you just got to make a call." I'll be like, "Yeah, 50 things have happened. I've got to choose one."
Yeah.
All right, this will be a good one. I can't wait to hear this one. Who complains more, 9s or 10s?
9s. That's not even a question.
I know. Yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there, because who else am I going to pick other than a 9? Last one, yellow card or penalty try? Which hurts more to give?
Penalty try. 100%.
Yeah, that's fair. What about red card penalty try? Still penalty try?
Oh, I've never had that. I've never, ever had that. Never once. Oh, like a red card and a penalty try at the same time, or
between them. Which one will
between
be?
the two? Yeah. Oh, penalty try. Penalty tries are hard to give.
Yeah,
You're literally handing 7 points over.
And you got to deliberate a bunch with your ARs. You got to make sure that it's the bang on decision. Unless you've seen it plain as day, like right in front. You got to make a tough decision when it comes to a penalty try.
The worst one is a scrum on the 5 meter line where it's like a pushover scrum and this player has clearly just lost his footing, or like someone's come offside and played the ball at the 8's feet. Penalty try, yellow card. That one's tough.
Yep, I do not envy you in those situations. That does not sound fun. Well, thank you, Caleb. I really appreciate you joining us today, and really excited to get some insight from someone who's got a completely different perspective. We get to hear from players and coaches all the time in social media and in interviews and things like that, but I'm always interested in hearing from the referees as well, because it's got to come full circle. You've got to hear from all different parties. You got to get the insight, and then that way we can all come to a uniform understanding of what's going on. I really appreciate you coming on and explaining a lot of it. If you're on Instagram or social media, check out North Harbour Referees. They're doing some incredible stuff with the social media. And if you're in New Zealand and you love rugby, just consider picking up a whistle. Come and help either North Harbour out or get amongst your club game. But yeah, mate, thank you for jumping on. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all, mate. It's been very enjoyable.
Hopefully we can get you on the pod again and we can chat more about Hurricanes and Chiefs, because I see them either meeting in the playoffs or in the finals. I'd love to hear your take on that one. But yeah, stick around, tune in. We've got an episode next week coming up. We've got a doozy. We'll see you soon. Have a good one, guys.